This guest is not only an Emmy-nominated show producer, but also made history as the youngest Black American playwright in Broadway history. Jordan E. Cooper, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We are so proud of you and your courage.
That means the world. That really does.
You're doing amazing things. So I want to first get this question out of the way because we celebrate people's accomplishments over here.
Yeah.
You're an Obie Award winner and an Emmy nominee, also the youngest, as I said, Black American playwright in the history of Broadway. Share the significance of those accomplishments for you in your personal life, as well as what that means to represent us as a community, as a Black gay man, and have those type of achievements.
I always say like it's hard for me to process those things. Like I love the fact that they happen and it's so cool to be recognized. But like I've always been like such a focused horse. It's like move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that I've been working on trying to get better at acknowledging myself and letting myself have the moment of, no, you did that. You know, you did a thing, and it's okay to sit in that for a second before you move on to the next, you know, because those things is like, it really doesn't belong to me, right? It belongs to us. It belongs to those who never thought it was possible, to let them know that, hey, this is possible. You can come and get yours too.
You're from Texas, but tell us about that town in Texas and what it was like growing up for you, and when did you recognize you were attracted to other men?
I was very, isolated in my little shell, being a theater kid, making my plays. I said I was in a shell. I was in a shell internally, but I wasn't in a shell externally because, the one thing I knew that I could do on this earth was tell stories. So I was loudly telling stories in the church. I was loudly telling stories in my backyard. I was loudly telling stories in rec centers and stuff like that I could rent out and, tell stories. I used to even sell concessions at a theater, just so I could see the show for free, all these different things in the midst of just loving storytelling. When I discovered that I was attracted to other men, that's a hard question, because it just always felt like it just was, it just was. I'm trying to think as far back as I can. I'm like, I know incidents that happened in second grade and so on, but I'm like, it started so much earlier than that because I think it was just a part of existence, right? It was just a part of like, the same way like a straight guy would be like, when do you know you were attracted to a girl? It's like when I popped out of my mama. You know what I mean? Like, right. it's like that's just what it's always been. But I remember one time I was a kid, and I was watching my brother and my dad and my uncle. We were all watching football. They were watching football, and I'm watching the screen, and a dude just tackles another dude or whatever, and then his booty like jiggles because they play it in slow motion, and his booty like jiggles. I'm like, y'all see how his booty jiggle? Y'all see that booty jiggle like that? They stopped, like you could hear a rat piss on cotton. They like turned to look at me. What did you just?
Right.
What did you say? And I had to go to bed early that night. Yeah, I had to. I was sent to my room. But it was just like, how can you see this man in tight tights with this big? We just gonna act like it don't exist. We just gonna act like. But when the cheerleaders get up there, they're like, ooh, look at this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, and it wasn't even sexual. I was just like, y'all see it? Yep, it's on the screen. And they playing it over and over again in slow motion. You just can't. I just always felt alone. I always felt isolated, which is dangerous. Mm-hmm. Very dangerous. Because also when I think about like why I feel like a lot of the queer community is so sexualized, right? Or over-sexualized. I think it has a lot to do with repression. It has a lot to do with like a lot of queer men didn't get their, prom. They didn't get to like go on dates with other boys and Whereas a lot of straight people, it's expected upon them from the moment a little boy is probably 3 years old. If he even hangs out with another girl in the classroom, it's like, oh, that's your little girlfriend. That's your little
Right.
girlfriend, right? So you sexualizing a kid at that young. You're putting that on them, but also even beyond sexualization, you're allowing them to develop and explore, right? Whereas we are not allowed to explore, a lot of us, until we're in our late teens, early 20s, right? So I think that that's a very dangerous thing, especially like, and we can talk about it. We can talk about it. I think also it's a dangerous thing in terms of like age gaps too. Cause like, I feel like a lot of young Black men, like who are queer, like some of their first experiences are with men who are like in their 30s and their 40s. And it's disturbing when you think about it. When you've grown and you take a look back and you're like, wow, like what the heck? But when you in it, you like, oh, I got an older, you know what I mean? But it's like, really, that is trauma. That is trauma. You should not be 16 years old talking to no 35-year-old man. You should not. And no 35-year-old man should not be trying to hit in the DMs of no 16-year-old boy. It's just, but because they once again were so repressed, they're not even the 35-year-old is not thinking like, oh, you know what I mean? It's like it all comes from this idea of once again being shoved into the dark corner and not being allowed to have the normal American teenage life, right? It's really interesting how that works. But I mean, that's even the case with straight people. A lot of, and I talked about that on the Miss Pat show last season, right? A lot of Black men, their first experiences were with older women as well. And I think there's an expectation there of like as if it's not sexual assault, or if it's not because you're 16 or you're 15 and you want it and you thought it was a child. No, that ain't that ain't the right seasoning in the pot.
Right.
That ain't the right seasoning in the pot, you know. But we don't. But like nobody, Black men we're so forgotten in those conversations. Nobody stops to actually talk to us. You know, nobody stops to actually say, hey, you know, this is how you move forward with this. Because it's kind of like we're expected to just navigate things on our own. And then you wonder why HIV rates are the way they are, you know. And it's because of a lack of education. It's because of a lack of guidance. It's because of a lack of nobody cares about us. You know what I mean? Nobody cares. So it's like we have to teach ourselves these things. They have sex talks with like straight kids in school, but it's like it's a totally different situation with us, right? So it's like, and then on top of that, the stigma of HIV and like how the world tells you should look at yourself, and how the world tells you should look at your body and look at your mind after somebody's been, you know what I mean? In fact, it's just all, there's a lot of work to do.
I'm glad that you're passionate about it.
Yes.
I think at one time or another, most Black gay men have felt lonely in some major capacity. What have been some of your major personal challenges, and how have you overcome them?
Self-worth is definitely a thing. I think communication is definitely a thing. Because once again, those are not necessarily things that you get in your formative years, or a lot of people get in their formative years when you come from a Black household. My ability to be okay with where I am as a human being, especially when it comes to like relationships, or when it comes to, you know, things like that, in the sense of like, I feel like, you know, I was raised in the Tyler Perry film generation, where like you aspired to be the light-skinned man on the horse who was coming in to save the day. You know what I mean? You aspired to be, you know, Shamar Moore. And I think that for me, I've never really spoken about this. I don't know how it is for other people, but I think that for me, when it came to relationships, I think I aspired to be that. And because I tried so badly to be perfect, or tried so badly to get everything right, that I did not allow room for my true self to creep in, or my true thoughts to creep in, or my true emotions to creep in, because I was so focused on getting it right. You know what I mean? Getting it right. I remember I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were talking about, he like described it as this analogy as like, imagine like going to school every day in a suit and tie, right? And everybody else is in, shorts and t-shirts and whatever they want to wear to school. And you show up every day in a suit and tie because you've been told and you believe that you have to show up in a suit and tie in order to be respected, in order to be heard, in order to be, actually considered. And so you show up every day in your suit and tie, you show up every day in your suit and tie. And then towards the end of the year, you just throw a tantrum and are upset because you're hot and you're like, why am I still wearing this suit and tie? Why do I have to wear a suit and tie? And everybody else is looking at you like, didn't nobody tell you to wear a suit and tie? You can take your suit and your tie off, right? And I think that especially in a professional world when it comes to being Black and queer, I think there's always that element of like suit and tie. I have to be respected. I have to be seen as this thing. When in reality, it's like, no, there's a way you can teach the world to love you for who you are, And if not the world, then the people around you. And if not the people around you, then yourself. And if not yourself, then God.
Come on, Pastor Cooper. What was the transition like from Texas to Miss Pat show? Mm-hmm. I know we said that is the creator and EP of the Miss Pat show to Broadway. What was that transition like?
I moved to New York in 2014 to go to school, to go to the new school for playwriting and acting. And I just kept writing plays there, working on my stuff. And then I wrote Aint No Mo my junior year, which ended up being able to get me an agent. And then that agent introduced me to Lee Daniels. And then he came out to see a workshop of the show. And then that's when he was like, oh, like, who are you? Like, we have to like make sure the world sees this thing and like make sure that you get everything you need. So I was grateful. And then I did that. And then he was like, you're a great writer. Like, what do you want to work on? Like, what do you want to do next? And I was like, oh, like I would like to do TV because I know I want to, go ahead and do that. So he was like, okay, like I've read your script, you're great. Like I'm gonna put you in the Star Writers Room. So I wrote on the final season of Star and got to like experience everything that is a Hollywood writers room and television and making all that. And then he came to me and he was like, yo, like I have this comedian, her name is Miss Pat, and we don't have a concept for her. We don't know what we want to do with her, but just read her book and see if you can come up with a concept. And so I read her book, Rabbit, which is an autobiography of hers. And it's so good. And I'm just a fan of sitcoms. I always love sitcoms. And so like, because to me, it was like theater with cameras. It was theater when theater wasn't accessible. And so I wanted to create my own version of those old school sitcoms, like On the Family, Good Times, Jeffersons, Martin, but R-rated. R-rated in front of a live studio audience.
Ain't no man gonna tell me nothing about my hair. Not the hair that I buy or not the hair that I grow, okay? They barely know how to wash their ass correctly.
I know that's right. Then they got the nerve to ask you to eat it. So this ain't no safe space no more.
And we just clicked and she was like, nigga, you right, like an old Black woman. And we just clicked and I was like, I want to do this with you. And she was scared at first. She was like, you want me to curse on TV? I was like, you curse every day. She was like, nigga, I don't motherfucking talk like that. I was like, you literally just said 16 cuss words in one breath. Like that's what you thought. And so thankfully she trusted me and I'm so grateful for that. Because I was like 22 at the time, 23. And she just trusted me. And because they were going to do it at Fox. We knew Fox wanted her. But I was like, you don't need to be on TV. You don't need to be on Fox. You need a streamer. You need to be yourself. And so she trusted this little 23-year-old boy to tell her not to get that broadcast television money and to just be her authentic self. Because I was like, imagine if Richard Pryor and Red Fox could just be themselves on TV. You know what I mean? Sold it to Hulu. And we shot the pilot with Hulu. Debbie Allen directed the pilot. And Hulu dropped it, which was crazy because I found out that it was their first time doing a sitcom. And they had tested it with audiences all over the country. and it tested through the roof. It was the highest tested pilot ever. But the main guy at Hulu still didn't understand it. He was like, why is she yelling at her kids? Why is she talking to her children like that? And da, 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 da. Just not really understanding the culture of it all.
The culture.
Yeah, not understanding it. And so he dropped it because he didn't like it. We just didn't end up being at Hulu. And thankfully BET Plus came in and they bought it. And that's where we are now. So we've been at BET Plus ever since. And we were able to get them their first Emmy nomination in 40 years of existence through the Miss Pat show. Yeah. Yeah.
And even though there's this Black woman who is the main character, it does have a lot of very relatable themes to the queer community.
Yeah.
How'd you manage to do all that?
Yeah, Pat's daughter is queer in real life, so I was able to use a lot of, their relationship and put it into the TV version of themselves, and really like have real conversations about sexuality and gender and class and trans folks and like all these kind of conversations that we wouldn't normally see on like a BET platform, you know what I mean? But do it in a real way. And it's like, I remember there was a conversation on Twitter because people were like looking at the clip where she comes out, her daughter comes out to her, and she comes out because Pat's, talking like Pat. And Pat's like, yeah, you ain't doing that bullshit shit.
Right.
And then her daughter is like, why do you keep saying that? She's like, what that got to do with you? What that ain't got nothing to do with you? She's like, actually, it does. You know what I mean? Actually, it does. And people are like, well, why is she talking like that? And I just think this is homophobic. Nah, 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 nah. That's how people talk, y'all. And the only way we can have real conversations is if we go head to head with ignorance. That's the only way we can make progress. That's the only way, not only in real life, but also in the work. So, it's so interesting. We have we're in this time where like people are like they don't want to see, Black people having hard conversations or Black people, actually going through drama. And I'm like, okay, yes, go watch The Proud Family. Okay, yes, go watch, The Cosby Show. Go watch these things that are excellent in form, but also don't hit you over the head with life topics, raw and all up in there. Because I think that there's the beauty about Blackness is that we're so wide and we're so vast and we're so big and we're so bold that you can, if you want to watch some trauma shit, you can watch some trauma shit. If you want to watch some happy shit, go find some happy shit, But we cannot limit ourselves to not being able to have real conversations in real situations, because white people get to be that liberated all the time. White people, I have never seen a white person complain about, I don't know, Schindler's List. I've never seen a white person complain about The Fablemans. I've never seen a white person complain about Top Gun Maverick. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that we have to allow ourselves to be as complex as white people.
We have to talk about your run on Broadway with the show Aint No Mo. There was the challenge of keeping it open because ultimately because it was a Black queer show and some of the challenges that come with that. Yeah. I read a quote from you that said, one of the biggest challenges of being a Black playwright, Black writer, being on Broadway is loving something so much that's not built for you. Talk about some of the challenges that you faced, running that show on Broadway, what your experiences were, what you learned from it, and what gave you the courage to face it all.
That's a great question. I think that it was hard. First of all, it was a play that was Black and queer as fuck. We just got a GLAAD Award nomination, which is so dope. I'm so excited about that. But like, it's hard when you don't have celebrities in the play before you go on stage, like before the show actually starts, because people don't know who you are, and it's not based off of a movie or a book or anything like that. So it takes time to build an audience. The problem was that we opened and closed in the same month because we didn't have an audience. The marketing for Broadway is pretty much cut and dry. It's pretty much, you do the same thing for every show, right? But the problem is not every show is the same and not every show has the same audience. So a lot of the work that I was fighting against and am fighting against now for other shows too is like, we have to be intentional about the audiences that we're allowing into this theater, right? Letting Black folks know that, hey, there's a play on Broadway and you are welcome. Because a lot of Black folks don't know that they're welcome to Broadway. Broadway has to be intentional about letting Black folks know in Black neighborhoods that Black Broadway shows are happening. Even when they don't have Denzel in them, even when they don't have Samuel Jackson in them, even when they don't have these people who Black folks recognize. No, it's just art that you can engage with. Just same way you engage with a movie at the movie theater, same way you engage with a TV show on your Roku remote. You know what I mean? It's art for you to engage with. And there's a narrative that it's too expensive, and we did do a lot of work around like making sure that the ticket prices were like affordable, like $30 tickets, but which was rare for Broadway. But even more so than money, because we got money. We got money. It's just about where do we want to spend that money and how do we want to spend that money. And if you're not doing no work to let me know that I'm invited nowhere, why would I show up? And I think that was the problem with Aint No Mo. And I think that for me, because I've been a hustler all my life and I've been, putting up my own shows and maxing out credit cards from the time I was 11 years old, trying to put on plays. I think that I thought that when you get to Broadway, there's a system that's going to take care of you. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows, you know what I mean? Because I was in the show and I wrote the show. So I'm trying to focus on just making the material great, right? And I think what I learned was that I can't necessarily trust other cooks in the kitchen. Not that they can't cook, but they might not know what a seasoning rack is. You know what I mean? And I think that it was a thing where I was so focused on the work that I wasn't in those meetings trying to like tell you, no, you need to put a billboard on 125th. You need to put a billboard on Church Ave. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm thinking that, oh, it's a Black show. They know this. It's a Black show. They know this. I don't have to, let them do their jobs. That's what they get paid thousands of dollars to do. Let them do their job. You know what I mean? And it's not their fault. It's the tools that they've been given. Because they can really do what they know, It's not their fault. It's not like they were intentionally not trying to get Black. You know what I mean? It's like, no, they're just following the system that has always been in place. And I think that I learned when I stepped back into Jordan mode, when I stepped back into the 20-year-old who was standing in Times Square handing out flyers, that's when I was able to get the work done. And I think that's what meant a lot to me, like as far as community. That's like the way people came out, the way people stepped up, the way people came through. That was just a show of how powerful we are. The fact that we were able to get an extension, you know what I mean? Like that was powerful. And I hope that Broadway looks at that and tries to shift some things because, it's a different time. Even as much as it was before the pandemic, things don't work the same way anymore. Maybe we should do more nonprofit Broadway shows so more people can see them. And we just got to look at the system and examine the system. And that's what I was bucking up against. And the courage to do it really came from frustration, from anger, and not anger out of like bitter. Like people think, he was just doing that because it was his show and da 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 da. No, it had nothing to do with that. If I'm a playwright and I know that I wrote a really great play, and I know that we did everything we possibly could. We had all the resources we could possibly have to do the thing, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If I'm a playwright and I know that we made something great and we have not been given every resource, we have not been given every tool, we have not been set up for success, not because of the show, but because of the system, I'm going to fight. Because that has nothing to do with Jordan Cooper. That has nothing to do with Aint No Mo. That has to do with the shows that are coming up after me and the shows that have come before me. You know, people talk about shows like Strange Loop, which was great, right? But the thing about Strange Loop is that like Strange Loop is the first play to have a Pulitzer Prize and a Tony Award for Best Musical and still close before playing a year, because people don't know about it. And of course, there's other factors. I'm not going to pretend like that's the only thing, right? But I think that until everybody's working on the same playing field, we can never know why the race ends where it ends.
Last question for you. What does it mean to be a Black gay man? Where do we find our strength? Where should we find our courage? Where should we find the will to live and make the best out of life for ourselves?
I think the beauty in being a Black gay man is you're automatically gifted. You're automatically touched. You're automatically given. You know, a lot of people say it's a setback, but I think it's a step forward, because you cannot not be seen in a room. You may not be acknowledged, but you cannot not be seen. You know what I mean? Because we are too special. We are too smart. We are too intelligent. We are too beautiful. We are too complex. We have the power within us to survive against all odds. And I think that not a lot of people are born with that power. Not a lot of people are put through that same washing machine that we come out of. And I think that we have to realize that our blues is also our power. Our blues is the thing that pushes us forward and makes us stronger and makes us wiser and makes us louder and makes us dance a little harder. Our blues is our magic. And I think that once we find our power within that blues, within that pain, within that setback, within that heartache, nothing can touch us. Nothing can touch us in any space. And we should be proud of that. We should be proud of that. There's this monologue that Peaches talks about in Aint No Mo, where she says, "Easy don't know me and I don't know easy." You know, Black folks ain't meant to know that kind of word. Knowing that kind of word just makes you weak as fuck and dull. If I ever see Easy, I'm gonna cross the motherfucking street because that nigga is evil. All right, nigga ain't nothing but ignorance. Nigga ain't nothing but darkness and destruction, fire and death. So we can't rely on Easy. We can't rely on immediate acceptance. It's not always gonna be there. But what we can rely on is self-acceptance, self-love, and self-preservation, you know?
Well, we're gonna have to pass the collection plate because you done said that you done preached the sermon up on here. But I truly do thank you. It takes, people sometimes don't know the courage that it takes to do the work that a Jordan E. Cooper does, and to push past even things in self so that you can keep getting to those levels you have to get to.
Yeah.
Especially as a Black queer man on Broadway. That's incredible. So again, thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and happy Black History Month.